only to movies that have met a criteria for participation by race, gender, sexual orientation, and disability status of cast and crew. This is live yesterday from LA. Matt Johnson was here talking about this. It's going into effect. And if you wish to be considered in 2025 for Best Picture, you're going to have to check all with those who voted at Smerconish.com. 94% said no to that idea. Today, a very simple question. At fault, Chris Rock or Will Smith? Chris Rock or Will Smith? While you're at the website voting on today's survey question, please check out the reporting from the Daily Star of the United Kingdom. Will Smith's brutal smack of Chris Rock at the 2022 Oscars ceremony was choreographed Hollywood display. So said celebrity psychic and body language expert Inbal Honigman, who has explained that the incident comes off as backslapping, which saw two men appear dignified and leisurely, at least on the surface. She explained to the Daily Star, body language analysis is not an exact science. In some situations, people would consciously decide to project a certain persona, and along with their voice, their breathing, and their stance they decide to adopt in the moment, their entire body language could be telling one story while their emotions tell another. She raises the question of whether the whole thing was staged. And so, TC, I am not alone in raising that speculation. I'm in good stead.
You are in good stead because you have Inbal Honigman. And if you go to Smerconish.com and look at the Daily Star, then you will see that she is available for tarot and astrology readings
I'm
for
interested.
Individuals, parties, events. She's been a psychic her whole life, Michael, and has been using tarot cards since she was 20. So she really is in the know. Tarot, astrology, palmistry, clairvoyance, and other methods of divination in her readings. So yes, you are with Dr. Honigman for sure. And then let me remind you, your carpool also includes one Dave Portnoy,
Man knows his pizza,
of Barstool Sports, and Tucker Carlson.
Most popular cable show on television.
So Tucker Carlson did think that there was probably all staged. He says he's never seen an actor tell the truth, or they're always acting. And then Dave Portnoy did a deep dive with slow-mo, and he feels like Chris Rock was moving right as the fist was coming or moving towards, or I don't know what he was doing, but there was slow motion involved. There was an emergency press conference with Dave Portnoy does to great effect. And the four of you can be in a car together.
Chris Rock, like a goaltender during a shootout, who knew which direction that ball was going to be kicked, knew exactly what direction his cheek should move.
Oh, geez.
Just saying. Will Smith apologized. The rap coverage is posted at Smerconish.com. I would like to publicly apologize to you, Chris. I was out of line. I was wrong. I'm embarrassed, and my actions were not indicative of the man I want to be. This is interesting. From the LA Times today, also posted at Smerconish.com, LAPD was right not to investigate Will Smith for the slap heard round the world, so say the experts. There is a quote from an attorney who points out that in this instance, this is Alan Jackson, a former LA County prosecutor, to be arrested on a misdemeanor, it has to happen in front of the authorities, or conversely, the person against whom the crime was allegedly committed has to file a formal complaint with police. TC, might part of the reason why Chris Rock is not filing a police complaint is that it could bring to light, theoretically, the Jussie Smollett aspect of this whole case.
Oh, Lord, are you solving something? Is there something to be solved? Do you need to go back to the West Coast?
Does the lack of a police report not suggest everybody was in on it?
I think it suggests that Chris Rock is a gentleman and he handled it really well. And he is the ultimate professional. The show must go on, and he kept rolling with it.
Noam Dworman is the Comedy Cellar owner in New York City, tells Page Six that he's now worried. He says he hopes that it doesn't spark copycat incidents in comedy clubs. Others have made the same point. Like, now is this accepted behavior that somebody tells a joke, Jackie Mason-ish singles you out of the audience and you have the right to go on stage and issue a beatdown?
Jackie Mason would get attacked by everybody, literally everybody.
True. A good point. Front page news at Smerconish.com. I went with the ABC coverage about President Biden making no apologies for saying that Putin cannot remain in power. According to ABC, President Biden appeared to want it both ways when he fielded a barrage of questions on Monday, asking him to clarify the comment that he made that Vladimir Putin, quote, cannot remain in power. He stood by his words, expressing, quote, moral outrage, but also clarified that he was not articulating a policy change. Another issue that I think is worthy of our attention. I mentioned that after coming on air today, a story broke written by Robert Costa and Bob Woodward. Robert Costa, who was a guest on this program just yesterday, the two of them, they wrote Peril together. Bob Costa has now moved on to CBS, but still breaking stories for the Washington Post with Bob Woodward. They have a good thing going together, the two of them. And the story that they broke is how there's a gap of 7 hours and 37 minutes in President Trump's presidential diary for January 6. Well, this news comes on the heels of a report also in today's newsletter about how a federal judge said that President Donald Trump and lawyer John Eastman more likely than not committed crimes in their efforts to obstruct the certification of Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election. Here's what I think is the big picture to keep your eye on. Because, this could have been fodder for the investigations, some of which have already fallen by the wayside, but it's ripe for Merrick Garland. In other words, the January 6th investigation can't bring charges against Donald Trump. They can make a recommendation to the Justice Department. Merrick Garland, obviously in the loop as to what has been coming out in a public domain about Donald Trump and his actions pertaining to January 6th. Would Garland go so far, never happened before, as indicting a former president of the United States? And the other thing I think to be noted is that while many of us paying attention, we think by now we know everything about January 6th, there's still a lot that we haven't realized because it hasn't yet entered the public domain. So that's also something to pay attention to. I get a kind of I told you so with a Washington Post piece today written by Philip Bump under this headline: Andrew Cuomo is not the only New Yorker who wants Andrew Cuomo to be governor again. Philip Bump from the Washington Post taking a look at a new College Research Institute survey saying it is not a crazy idea that Cuomo could run successfully for his old job. TC, you have to give me the credit for at the time that he resigned saying, I don't think he's finished. You may remember that I came on air on POTUS and I parsed a number of New York political surveys. And I said, and do you remember? It's okay if you don't, but the one demographic that I singled out and I said, take a look at this. This is very telling.
I'm thinking it was race. I think there was a different,
absolutely,
wasn't it? Okay, so there was a difference with whether the black voters would stick with him, and I believe the answer was that they would.
Correct.
Oh,
in other words, the charges made against Governor Cuomo at the time, according to the polling data, then mattered less to black voters than white voters.
Interesting.
This survey from Siena College that Philip Bump writes about, among black voters, Andrew Cuomo leads now Governor Hochul 50 to 23. 50 to 23. I forget what the number is, but he is sitting on a tremendous amount of money that he raised for a campaign that he never ran. So he's got money in the bank, and he's got a standing in particular among minority voters that suggest he could come back and win a primary, and probably if he wins a primary, could win a general election. So the other thing to be remembered is he was under threat of impeachment that could have carried the penalty in New York of him being precluded, like impeachment nationally. If Donald Trump had been successfully impeached, if he'd been convicted, said more specifically by the Senate, then he couldn't have run again, but he wasn't. And similarly, where Cuomo was not impeached and convicted, he can run again. That's why he resigned, I think, when he resigned. And the numbers are bearing it out. We had something interesting happen. You may remember a week ago, I told you that There's a competitive race for governor in Pennsylvania and U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania. First time in a long time, both of those jobs are open, one of the Senate seats. And I said, Republicans are getting ready to debate, and they've gotten together, the candidates, and they say, hey, if you want to moderate our debate, there are criteria. And the criteria include the fact that you have to be a Pennsylvania resident, you have to be a Republican, and wait for it, you must never have spoken negatively about any of the candidates. Okay? So just think if you employed that standard on a presidential level, like who in the world among the national media could moderate a debate? Because somebody's going to parse every word you've ever said. Oh, you were critical of Trump. You were critical of Biden. Okay, well, they found people who fit that bill, and they had the debate. No sooner do they have the debate than YouTube takes down the debate because they say that there was misinformation given about ballot security that was dispensed during the debate. Quote, our team has reviewed your content, and unfortunately, we think it violates our misinformation policy. So you cannot go to YouTube if you want to watch the Pennsylvania debate that was orchestrated by friendly moderators. Terrible tragedy in Pennsylvania where on Interstate 81 there was, did you see this yesterday? I was in the midst of a Zoom call at home, and out the window, what's the proper word? Snow squall.
Snow squall.
Snow squall hit.
Yep.
TC.
It was unbelievable.
I was driving on the Northeast Extension with my mother, going to visit, relatives on her side of the family a month ago, and in the midst of our trip, a snow squall hit. We were right by the Lehigh Tunnel, as a matter of fact. I remember it well. And I have never seen, much less driven, in anything like it. I frankly probably should have pulled over and gotten off the road and so forth.
Well,
I didn't.
I think anyone who watches the video that you're about to discuss will now pull over if anything like this happens, because that's clearly the answer. I've never seen anything like it. My phone went off like an alarm, an emergency weather alert.
Me too.
And said within the next 10 minutes. And they were right. It was literally blowing in from the west, and the wind started howling, and all of a sudden you couldn't see across the street. You literally couldn't see across the street. It was crazy.
Very sad.
And the pileup was the video of this pileup. How many cars was it?
50 plus?
50 plus.
Yeah.
3 people dead. And the video that they have that some people early on then got out of their cars and filmed it. They're just skidding, just tractor trailers skidding completely out of control. It was insane.
Yeah. Strange weather. Today, I maintain the last day that I came to the studio dressed in a heavy coat because it's going to turn on a dime by tomorrow. There's a video posted at Smerconish.com. The source is NPR. Headline is Nightly Midnight Jog by Indian Teen Inspires Millions. Do explain. The source is NPR.
So this is fantastic. So journalist, documentary filmmaker is driving home one night. It's 11:45 p.m. and he sees a kid. He thinks it's a kid, looks about 14 years old, full backpack, running along the side of the road. He thinks like, this is dangerous. I need to help this kid. So pulls over and asks him like, can I give you a ride? Where are you going? Turns out he's not a kid per se. He's 19, not 14. And he is jogging home. He's running home from his job where he works all day at McDonald's. He's running home, Michael, because he wants to stay in shape and get in shape because he wants to join the army. His mother's hospitalized. He lives with his brother. He's running home. His brother works the night shift. He's going home to cook for his brother. So when his brother gets home, he'll have a meal waiting for him. And the documentary filmmaker is filming this conversation. And the kid's just running and smiling and talking and says, no, you know what? I don't need a ride. I need to get my miles in. And this is who I am and what I'm doing. And just off he goes. And it is just so uplifting and amazing.
Really inspirational.
Yeah, really
terrific.
Positive.
And finally, at least for now, these are not all the headlines, but we're limited on time. I have Brian Stelter's coverage. He, of course, the host of Reliable Sources on CNN. Today is the launch day for CNN Plus, and I bought it. I subscribed to $2.99 a month for life, so long as you maintain your active subscription. So I'm looking at a screen right now that has CNN Plus on it. And it's very interesting. I mean, it's quite the experiment. I hope it's successful for obvious reasons. But there's live programming. There are programs that I think they've drawn from the CNN archive, for example, Anthony Bourdain and a lot of the series, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and so forth.
A lot of the documentaries.
There's original programming. I mean, Chris Wallace is really someone around whom I think more than any other personality. I think that Chris Wallace is a personality that they're really seeking to build on.
What time is he on?
6 o'clock.
But so it occurs to me, what do they want you to do? Do they want you to watch him at 6 o'clock, or do they want you to watch CNN live at 6 o'clock?
So I can tell you that at
that's kind of interesting to me.
4 o'clock today, Casey Hunt's program will air.
So what do? You watch the Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer? Do you watch Jake Tapper live, or are you going to go on CNN
My
Plus?
hunch, I know nothing. Okay, I know nothing as evidenced.
They're like scooping themselves.
TC, as evidenced by the fact that I am paying for my own subscription.
Couldn't figure out
okay.
that Turner broadcast
I know nothing,
email, huh?
But my hunch is, here's the play, as I understand it, again, without the benefit of any inside information, the cable. Our daughter and son don't have cable television.
So this is for people that don't have CNN.
So the idea is there's so many cable cutters now out there, and the numbers of people who are, as we still do in my house, subscribing and getting all these channels and so forth. It's now a streaming world that we're living in. And I imagine that you should be asking the reverse, which is, when will that CNN content migrate to the streaming service?
They're looking for the future.
The future is this. I don't know in the short term if all of a sudden it's going to pop. And if you've seen the CNN commercials, you see that they're presenting the hosts in a different way than they appear on television. For example, I'm looking at the screen right now. Anderson Cooper is here, but it's not Anderson Cooper in, a dark sport coat and tie and so forth and reporting on Ukraine. Instead, it's parental guidance with Anderson Cooper.
Oh.
So I see a theme here of these hosts letting their hair down and doing something different in the streaming world than they are doing in the cable world. But today's the launch day, and I spent my $2.99 a month for life. So there you go. Those are the headlines from Smerconish.com. Make sure you're registered for the newsletter. If you're tired of paying too much for your cell phone plan, you're in luck. Consumer